reality is that everyone in this room has a story of suffering. Some of you may carry scars on your body physically. Some of you carry wounds that no one else can see. Maybe for you it's a diagnosis that changed your life. Maybe it's the ache of losing someone that you love. Maybe it's depression or anxiety or the crippling mental health issues that no one can see. You can't describe it, but you know that it's there. See, suffering touches all of us. And some of you may be, and I pray that you all are, may be in a state where life is steady right now. That's great. But if we're honest, you know that none of us can escape it. If you're not suffering today, you've either just come out of suffering or one day you will walk through it. There is no way you can avoid this. And the reality is we live in a world that's both beautiful and broken at the same time. It's filled with laughter and tears, weddings and funerals, new life and hospital rooms. And deep down, all of us have wrestled with these questions. Why is life this way? Why does God allow so much pain? Where is God when I'm hurting? Will it always be like this? Or is there something better coming? And when suffering is personal, it's not just enough to hear cliches like, well, God works all things together for your good. It's true. Or God won't give you more than you can handle. See, this doesn't help when the nights are long and the grief is debilitating. But see, this is why I love Romans 8. Paul doesn't suggest that we need to sugarcoat anything here. He doesn't say this, if you're a Christian, you won't hurt. He doesn't say, just pray harder and it'll go away. Instead, he tells us two things that are both honest and full of hope. Your suffering is real, but it's not forever. Your suffering suffering is real and it's not going to last forever. And there's something else here too that we see, something even better than this. The glory that's coming is greater than the pain that you're dealing with now. The glory that is awaiting you in the future is significantly and infinitely better than any of the suffering that you go through now. See, today in this passage, just a couple verses, Paul is going to lift our eyes beyond the immediate. He wants us to see that what we're going through is not the whole story. Right now, you're suffering, whatever you may be going through, or if you remember back to suffering that you've gone through, it seems chaotic. It doesn't seem to make sense. It's confusing. But God sees this whole story. He's weaving this masterpiece. And one day, if you belong to Christ, the promise is you will see that too. You probably don't understand it now, but one day you will see the purpose in all of it. And this is the hope of Romans 8, that you're exhausted. You're barely hanging on. This passage is pointing you to the answer that you ask, where is God when it hurts? This passage is for the one who wonders if the groaning will never end. And Paul says, yes, your suffering is real, absolutely, but the glory that awaits you is far greater. So let's look at Romans 8, verses 18 through 22. Paul says this, for I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. The first thing we see in verse 18 is that suffering is real, but it's only temporary. Now, I say that knowing how it can come across, especially if you're in the middle of something difficult. That sounds mean. It sounds like I'm just kind of waving off your suffering to say that, it's only temporary. And then you come back and say, no, I've had this my entire life, or I've suffered this unbearable pain for 10 years, and you're telling me it's only temporary? See, what Paul is telling us, though, here is that we need to live with the end goal in sight. There's no effective way to know where you're going or to get to where you're going unless you know where you're going in the first place. You need to know what it is that you're seeking after. You have to have a plan. And for Paul, the guide is the future glory that's to come. He's not denying that pain exists and suffering exists. He knows that firsthand. Think about the life of Paul. Paul had been beaten, threatened daily, imprisoned. And not only that, Paul lived every single day of his life knowing that he was responsible for murdering innocent Christians before he became a believer. He carried that weight on his shoulders, that guilt of what he had done. And so add that to all the physical suffering that he went through, he knows what it is to be in pain. And so he's not saying that suffering doesn't exist or that it's not a big deal. I'm going to read verse 18 again. For I consider that the sufferings, so he says their sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. So in essence, he's putting suffering on a scale. And if you have two things that are of equal weight, exactly that scale balances. And what he's saying is that the suffering that you go through, it feels heavy. It weighs you down. Except when it's compared to the weight of the glory that awaits you if you're a child of God. And the scale, it just explodes and it just drops. Because the weight of the glory that's to come is so much greater than the weight of the suffering that you are going through now. On one side, there's this present time. The other, the glory to be revealed. The future for believers is so much heavier that the present pain can't even come close to it. There's no comparison here. Maybe this will help too. When I was in high school, I had a friend whose mother had this big contraption. And when I first saw it, I was like, what kind of torture device is this? Ultimately, it was just a loom, and which I guess could be a torture device if you don't like knitting or whatever. I don't know what it does in there. It makes tapestries. I don't know. And so she made these blankets or these tapestries that she would hang on the wall, and they were beautiful. I mean, the machine was huge. And she would make these, and they looked beautiful until you looked at the backside. It was not beautiful. It was a mess. It was this chaotic mess where all these knots and all these things are just kind of tangled together. And if you just look at the backside, you're like, you don't know what you're doing, lady. But when you look at the design of what she made, there is a purpose and a reason for it. It wasn't chaos. It was beauty. And this is what it often feels like where we stand. When suffering comes, it's like this tangled chaos. These knots that don't make sense and the picture looks ruined. It doesn't even look like anything. And Paul is saying here in Romans 8 that God sees the front side of that tapestry. He sees the full, completed image that he's weaving. And he promises that we will too one day. And so right now your pain may feel heavy, but from eternity's perspective, it is one thread in this masterpiece. Again, not to downplay it, but to show you that there is a bigger picture that God is weaving, and you're part of this story. Florence Chadwick, the first woman to swim the English Channel, both ways, attempted to swim from Catalina Island to California's coast in 1952. After 15 hours of swimming in the freezing Pacific, which is always cold, she was exhausted and she begged to be pulled out. The problem that she faced was there was fog. She couldn't see what was ahead. And she said this later, I'm not excusing myself, but if I could have seen land, I know I would have made it. 2 months later, she tried again. This time, the same fog that comes on the Pacific coast rolled in, and this time she finished. What changed? This is what she said. I kept a picture of the shore in my mind. I never lost sight of where I was going. She couldn't see it, but she knew it was there. And she had this mental image that if I only keep pushing and pushing, and if I only hold on, I will make it there. See, in Romans 8, Paul is giving us a picture of the shore. He's telling us, don't quit, don't give up, don't give in. The glory is real and it is coming. But I know the response. I suffer so much. And I can hear some of your voices in my head saying that, and you're right. There's no denying this. There's no denying your suffering. There's no denying the millions of Christians who have died for the cause of Christ. There's no denying the thousands of Christians who are killed every single year simply because they follow Jesus. How does this make sense? Why is there so much suffering for people who've been chosen by God and adopted as part of His family? How does this make any sense at all? These are good questions. And it's difficult to have any understanding, though, beyond what we've experienced. An ant cannot explain nuclear physics to you. It's impossible. The ant has no understanding of these difficult things. Yet, we can only explain God in what He's revealed to us through His Word and through His creation. How can we grasp the full glory of eternity? We're limited on what we know and what we can fully comprehend, but what we do know is that Jesus doesn't promise to remove all of the suffering now. Instead, He promises to redeem it. Because He suffered for us on the cross, our pain is never wasted, and one day it will bring eternal joy. Now, how this all happens, I don't understand that. And in my own limited understanding, to try to comprehend who God is and how God works, sometimes I don't get it. But I see it here. I see it in Scripture. In the here and now, pain and suffering can be overwhelming. Looking to the future helps, but it doesn't fix things. The pain is still there, so what do we do then? Well, we've talked about this in Psalms. Remember, you are allowed to groan. Faith doesn't mean pretending that everything is fine, and that it doesn't mean that you go around saying, well, it's all part of the plan. You know those people, right? You're in the middle of suffering, and they're good-natured people. They want to help you, but you are suffering, and someone just comes and gives you a hug and says, it's all part of God's plan. And you feel you just, right? We've all been there. And even though it's part of God's plan, it doesn't mean that what you're suffering through now is fixed. But remember this, your groaning is not the end of the story. Jesus rose. That guarantees that your suffering has an expiration date. It will end. It will be fixed. If you are in Christ, you get to experience in the future a life without any of those things that cause you pain. This is what we keep our eyes on, the shore that maybe we can't see, but we know is there. We've seen the picture. I want to read verse 18 again to hammer this home. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. Paul says that there's a glory that's coming. That doesn't say possibly. It doesn't say perhaps. There's no maybe here. This is a future that's guaranteed. And what is included in this future? It's glory. The word Paul uses here for glory could be splendor, exalted, or brightness. This means that what God gives to us is not just escaping pain. It's so much more than that. It's being transformed into Christ's likeness and living in the presence of God forever. The lack of pain certainly points us to, and that's a hope that we have. But the fact that not only will we have a lack of pain and no more suffering and no more death and loss, we will get to stand in front of the Creator of the universe and glorify Him forever and ever. This is a guaranteed promise. And see, this is where the gospel comes in and it educates us in all of this. Remember the gospel. Jesus died so that your sin could be paid for. Jesus rose so death can be defeated. And Jesus reigns so that your future is secure. See, when we study how God works, it's often difficult to grasp these kind of things. We've never experienced eternity. I don't know what forever is. It just makes my head explode, right? I have nothing to compare it to. It's entirely foreign to us. But we keep studying. We don't give up. The future is promised even when we can't understand it. When you have a young child who wants to eat something that's poisonous, because it's blue or green or some other color of the rainbow and it looks pretty. And you say, no, that's floor polish. Or no, that's floor cleaner. And they keep going for it. At some point, they don't understand this will kill you. This is dangerous. But yet, they have to accept it, or they're going to feel your wrath, right? Their limited understanding doesn't mean that their outcome changes. And for us as a parent, we're saying, we know what's better for you. You don't understand this, but I do. And in an infinitely bigger way, that's what God is saying here. He's saying, look, I know the suffering is there. I know the pain. I know all of this. This is part of sin's existence in this world and sin's touch in this world, that we all suffer. But trust me. God's saying, trust me, I have a plan. Here's the promise. Eternity awaits you. Glory awaits you. And see, we have the benefit of knowing the end of the story. We know that glory wins. There's a scene at the end, or towards the end of Lord of the Rings, the Return of the King, where the good guys, ultimately, if you haven't seen the movie, the good guys are surrounded. Everything looks bad. They're kind of fighting back, but I think they all realize that this is about the end. They're not going to survive this. They're outnumbered. And what happens? It looks like evil wins, but Gandalf, who's a wizard, is coming, and he's coming down the hill with reinforcements. There's a battle that's coming. And he comes and he wins, and at least for the moment, they achieve victory, and they survive, and they live to fight another day. See, this is what Paul is doing here. See, we know this end of the story. If you've seen the movie, you know what's coming. You rewatch it like any good fan does, and you know what's coming. It's not a surprise. And Paul says, read to the end. Read to the end of this story. He's giving us a spoiler. He's giving us a peek to the last chapter when the moment, the present moment will feel impossible. We feel like all of the armies are coming after us. They're bearing down on us and we have no way out. And yet the promise is that glory will win. Christ will return. Death will be swallowed up in victory. See, as Christians, we're not worried or anxious about how the story will end. We know. And knowing changes how we endure the middle. So when suffering feels unbearable, remember what you're going through isn't the whole story. And also remember this too, you are not alone. See, sometimes when you struggle, when I struggle, the worst part of it is not the actual pain. The worst part of it is I feel alone. I feel like there's nobody there for me. It's the sense of isolation that's crushing. But Paul reminds us here that you are not the only one that's groaning. It's not just you. All of creation is groaning under the weight of sin, and it's all longing for redemption. And when you realize that your brothers and sisters in Christ, and even the world itself, they're all caught up in this same longing, it changes the way we suffer. You're part of a family that can come alongside you and say, I know how you feel, and actually mean it. Paul wants you to know that you're not alone in your groaning and you're not alone in awaiting glory. And so this isn't the main idea of what Paul is saying here, but it's something that you can see. It's not just that you suffer. All of creation is groaning. We share the same story. Look at verses 19 through 22. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope. That the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole of creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. Paul says that everything is groaning. What does he mean? Everything we experience are symptoms of a world under the curse of sin. Everything from hurricanes to tornadoes to disease, decay, all of it causes the earth to groan out in pain. But it's not whining or pointless groaning or hopeless groaning. It's actually expectant groaning. All creation waits for the day when it will be freed from the curse of sin that affects everyone and everything. And see, this is an effect of the gospel that is easily missed here. We do, and as Americans especially, we tend to personalize Jesus to us. It's all about me, right? Me and Jesus. That's the relationship. Jesus died for me. He did do that, 100%, and that's important to understand, certainly. But God's story is bigger than just you and Jesus. The plan is to restore all creation. See, in Genesis 1 and 2, God created everything, and everything was perfect. No sin, no death, no suffering, no groaning. Humanity was in a right relationship with God. We could go directly to God and talk to Him and walk with Him. And then Genesis 3 happens. Sin enters the world, and everything begins to unravel. The relationship that we had with God is now kind of severed, at least for a time. There's a break in this relationship. There's a sense of shame and sin that humanity rightly feels. And creation is fractured. Now keep that in mind. So that's at the beginning. Now I want you to fast forward all the way to the end, Revelation 21:5. Listen to these words with this in mind. And he who was seated on the throne said, "Behold, I am making all things new." He said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. This is a reversal of Genesis 3. What was broken in Eden is being restored, but not just restored, but made new, made better. This isn't just a reset back to the garden. It's the fulfillment of God's perfect plan fulfilled in Christ. So Revelation 21:5 fulfills the longing created in Genesis, this longing that we live in. We're in the Genesis 3 world right now. And we long for redemption, and we long for restoration. This is the groaning that Paul is talking about. The answer is right here. God will make all things new. The way that Paul explains this in Romans 8 is helpful. Verse 22 says that it's like childbirth. Now, I've never given birth to a child. I've been in the same room, if that counts. I hear stories as much as I don't want to hear these stories. And I know that at least for a moment when those contractions hit and for the months leading up to childbirth, the pain that comes from all of the complications, from the added weight to the back issues, and all of those things are not fun. But I've yet to meet a mother who says, it wasn't worth it. They say, no, 100% worth it. Would take that pain every day for what I received. See, Paul is saying this. He's saying that all of the pain and suffering that someone may go to, it's kind of like a mother in labor. Everything, the diagnosis that you may get, the graveside tear, the loss, the pain, the suffering, none of it is pointless. It's leading somewhere. There's life on the other side of this. And just like a mother keeps pushing forward because she knows that joy is coming, we keep hoping because we know that what God has promised, a day when sin, death, and suffering will be swallowed up by glory. See, the groaning isn't forever, but glory is. So when the world feels chaotic, your life feels chaotic, remember, it's not falling apart. It feels like it. It's groaning, but it's moving towards renewal. The Christian hope is that we can live with what comes because it's not just about us. We're not alone in this story because everything is being renewed. Now, back to what I said earlier. I don't want to downplay your suffering and your pain. I never want to do that because I understand, and it's all relative to our own situation. Your pain is not my pain is not your pain. But what I want to encourage you to do is have an eternal perspective. If you are a Christian, this is specifically for people who are followers of Christ, you have been justified, adopted, and forgiven, yet you're not yet glorified. You're not free from sin yet. You're not done with suffering. Kind of in this middle ground here. This is why we groan with creation, but we don't groan without hope. The cross and resurrection of Christ proves that God brings life out of death. He did it for Jesus, and He promises to do the same for us. And it was in this greatest act of suffering, the most unjust thing that has ever happened in the history of everything, that we are reminded that we are not home yet. The gospel reminds us that we're heading there. Suffering is the path that we tread as we move from blessing to glory. Picture walking down a dark hallway with someone who's already been there. You can't see a thing, but all you know is that you're being held. See, this is a Christian life. Jesus has gone before us. He's leading us into glory. And He's taking us to a place that's so much better than the stuff that we experience now. And so for the Christian, let this hope anchor you in grief and in pain and in uncertainty. And if you're a follower of Christ and you're struggling right now, here's some recommendations based on here. Don't carry your suffering alone. Galatians 6 tells us that the church exists to bear one another's burdens, to help carry your suffering. And for the skeptic, your groaning points to a deeper longing. If you're not a follower of Christ, this groaning that you experience that you have absolutely no answer for, there is no reason for you to suffer. It makes no sense. It's just some cosmic accident. This groaning is pointing you to something that only Christ can satisfy. And so everyone here has a story of suffering. For some of you, the pain is fresh. You didn't expect to walk through what you're walking through now. You never imagined that this diagnosis would come, or that this relationship would fall apart, or that you get that phone call at 2 a.m. telling you something that you never wanted to hear. For others, the wounds are older, but they're still there. Time's passed, people around you have moved on, they've forgotten, but you still feel that ache deep down. And some of you are in a season where life feels calm, but we all know that storms are coming. They're waiting. And if we're honest, there are moments when the weight of it all makes us want to quit. You wonder, God, are you even paying attention? Do you see what I'm going through? Are you going to do anything about this? See, Paul's not naive. He doesn't write Romans 8 from an ivory tower. He's just sitting back, sipping his tea and smiling at all your pain. This is a man who's gone through crazy suffering. And he has the audacity, though, to tell us this: I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed in us. Not because your suffering isn't real, because it is. Not because your pain doesn't matter, it does. But because Paul has seen something bigger. He's seen the one who holds your pain in his hands. Jesus Christ stepped into our groaning world. He took on our weakness, our sickness, and our shame. He bore the curse that broke creation in the first place. On the cross, He suffered the greatest suffering, and in His resurrection, He secured the greatest glory. This means that the cross tells us two unshakable truths. Our pain is seen. God hasn't forgotten you, and He hasn't abandoned you. The second is that your pain will not last forever. For every believer, every ounce of suffering that you've ever experienced has an expiration date on it. There will come a day when God Himself wipes away every tear from your eyes. A day when sin is no more, sickness is no more, death is no more. And on that day, the groaning will be over. The waiting will be over. Every wrong will be made right. But here's the tension. We're not there yet. Right now we live in between the already and not yet. Redemption has begun, but creation still groans. We still groan. And God invites us to bring these groans to Him, not to fake smiles, not to hide our pain, but to lament honestly before Him and to trust in Him. So what do we do while we wait? We cling. We cling to Jesus, the one who holds us fast. We cling to His promises when everything else feels shaky. We cling to the hope that He who began a good work in us will carry it forward to redemption. And maybe you walked in today feeling like you're barely holding on. The reality is that there's a lot. But here's the good news. That even when your grip feels weak and you have no more strength, you come to a realization that it wasn't you that was holding on in the first place. That it wasn't your strength, it wasn't your power, it wasn't you that was clinging. It was the Lord holding you in His hands the entire time. One day, maybe sooner than you think, the trumpet will sound. The skies will split open, and Jesus will return to make all things new. You'll stand in his presence, and in that moment, you'll see exactly what Paul saw, what he's pointing us to. You'll see the tapestry from the front side. Every knot, every tangle, every moment you didn't understand will now make full sense to you because you see the image that was created and the chaos that made it look so beautiful on the other side. So, Christian, your suffering is real, but it's not forever. The glory is coming, and until that day, we wait. But we don't lose heart. We know that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed. So we lift our eyes and we lift our head because the King is coming. And when he comes, everything changes. The tapestry in full glory and in full color. So in your suffering, in the pain that you're going through, in those difficult moments, remember that God is weaving all of those things together to make his glorious picture shine for everyone. And at completion, when Jesus returns, we will all see it. Would you pray with me?